Good morning, literacy scholars. This is Miss Bardalis coming to you for this week's video modules. Both of our video modules for this week will be led by me because we're doing things just a little bit differently. We're going to start today by talking about our objectives related to compare and contrast. Let's take a look at those objectives. Literacy scholars will be able to begin comparing and contrasting the similarities and differences between America in the 1920s and America in the 2020s by reading and analyzing excerpts from a collection of resources including photographs, graphs and charts, and excerpts from articles. Our language objective for today: literacy scholars will be able to compare and contrast the similarities and differences between America in the 1920s and America in the 2020s in reading and writing by using sentence stems, glossaries, word banks, videos, and images. Our key knowledge gained in this lesson is focusing on comparing and looking for similarities between America in the 1920s and 2020s, and focusing on contrasting or looking for differences between America in the 1920s and 2020s. Some of our key skills gained in this lesson include applying historic context and background knowledge of the 1920s, using our current context and experience to learn more about the 2020s, and being able to determine how something is similar and different by analyzing information from a variety of source mediums. We're going to start with our do now. Here you have two different advertisements. Your task is going to be to comment or annotate 2 times for the following purpose. How are the 2 posters similar and why? How are the 2 posters different and why? Go ahead and pause the video module here so you can complete your do now on slide 4. Now that your do now is complete, we're going to move on to our first set of vocab words for today: compare and contrast. Go ahead and pause the video so you can review the definitions in your class packet. Remember, you can click on the speaker symbol to have the definition read aloud to you. Now we're going to move on to our vocabulary practice on compare and contrast. You are going to compare and contrast cakes and pies. Complete each part of the diagram below to practice comparing and contrasting using cake and pie. Go ahead and pause here so you can complete your vocab practice on compare and contrast on slide 7. Now we're on to our second 2 vocab words for today: prohibition and suffrage. Go ahead and pause here so that you can review those definitions. Remember to use the speaker symbol to have the definition and situations read aloud to you. Time for some more vocabulary practice. Below are 2 images. Look at each image carefully, then respond to the question in 2 scholarly sentences. Which image best shows an example of suffrage and why? Now that you've finished that vocab practice, we're going to do some drag and drop practice as well. On the left of your slide is a list of statements. You need to drag and drop them to where you think they best fit in the Venn diagram, comparing and contrasting prohibition and suffrage. Go ahead and pause so you can complete your vocab practice for prohibition and suffrage on slides 10 and 11. Now it's time for us to start using reading to compare and contrast. We are going to be reading and responding to questions related to comparing and contrasting the 1920s in America to the 2020s in America. Many of us might already be familiar with some similarities, whether that's the fight for women's rights, optimism for the future, or new developments in technology. However, there are also contrasting differences between these time periods. It's important that we learn from history by comparing and contrasting and making informed and educated decisions based on the information we have. We are going to read excerpts from multiple different news sources. Read the directions on each slide carefully. Write in full and complete sentences. You have 2 days to complete this module. We're going to start by reading to compare. You're going to start with this excerpt from a Forbes article. You're going to read the excerpt and answer the questions below. Once you've completed that, you should move on to the second article excerpt. This one includes both a video and a short reading. You're going to comment or annotate 2 times for the following purpose. What are 2 laws that were famous parts of the 1920s? Finally, we're going to reread both articles to find the similarities between the 1920s and the 2020s. Go ahead and pause here so you can complete your reading, comments or annotations, and questions on slides 14, 15, and 16. Now that we've had some practice with reading to compare, we're going to try reading to contrast. Just like before, you're going to read two different articles to practice identifying differences. On this slide, read the article carefully and comment or annotate 2 times for the following purpose. What were the differences in the cost of living? How much things cost in the 1920s versus the 2020s? In our second article for our reading to contrast section, you're going to read the article and respond to the questions that follow in complete and scholarly sentences. Finally, we're going to look at those 2 articles together and continue practicing our contrasting skills. You're going to annotate or comment 3 times for the following purpose. What are the differences between the 1920s and the 2020s? After you've finished that, you'll be headed to your mastery check for today. Remember, you have 2 days to complete this module, so take your time. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And with that, I hope you have a good time learning a little bit about the 1920s and the 2020s.